Evening, everyone. This is my husband, Professor Albert Clausen from the University of Arizona, and he's going to be assisting me with my exhibits. I have a PowerPoint for this presentation, but because we're outside, I can't have a screen for my PowerPoint. So we're going to kind of wing it the way it is. And I also wanted to say that I think it's quite funny that there's so many Sugiyamas on this. It's like a Sugiyama family reunion or something. And I've only met the sensei before, so he's already my cousin. Okay. So tonight I'm going to talk to you about the passage of the federal bill which created the National Commission on Wartime Relocation and Internment of Civilians. And that's a long name for a commission, and I'll tell you how that occurred. Okay, so what story starts with my father, Francis Sueo Sugiyama. He was a U.S. citizen, Nisei, born in the Trust Territory of Hawaii. He was the youngest of 8 children of immigrant sugar plantation indentured servants. So he went to school barefoot. They were so poor. In a village back home on the Big Island. This is on the northern tip of the Big Island, where I was also born. Okay, so Francis, unfortunately, was in Los Angeles when Pearl Harbor was bombed. He was a first-year dental student at University of Southern California. And so what USC did was they expelled 120 Nisei students like my father because of the Executive Order 9066. And most of you know what that executive order did. It subsequently rounded up 120,000 Japanese Americans. So my father was one of the so-called lucky ones. He got a voluntary pass from General DeWitt's people. Now, I don't even know how he did this, because I didn't ask at the time, but he got a pass and he fled by train to Chicago. So he was not interned. So he was lucky. Because as you know, most people spent 3 years in the camps. We found out later that only 500 of these voluntary passes were issued. So as I said, my father was lucky. He spent a year and a half in Chicago taking classes at Loyola University, working part-time as a postal clerk, and then he was readmitted to dental school at the University of Maryland in Baltimore. So he persevered. He did not give up. And there was no racism against him in Chicago or in Baltimore, where he eventually got his dental degree. So Dad graduated in 1945 from University of Maryland Dental School, went back to Hawaii, still the Trust Territory. He met my mother, had 3 children. I'm going to fast forward here. I grew up, I heard this story from him. And so I heard about the injustice growing up. Why did Dad go from Hawaii to Baltimore? Anyway, I went to law school at Boston College Law School, and then I ended up being a legislative aide to U.S. Senator Dan Inouye. And I have talked to groups in which I talk about the legendary Dan Inouye, and I ask people who has never heard of him. And usually everyone has. And he was legendary. Okay, so. Here's a photo of the senator. He was Hawaii's first congressman. When Hawaii became a state in 1959, Dan Inouye became the first congressman. Then in 1964, he became United States Senator. So by the time I ended up there, he was already a senior U.S. Senator, because Sparky Matsunaga was the junior U.S. Senator. So you ask yourself, how did she from the village on the Big Island know Dan Inouye? Okay. Dan Inouye, okay, I'll hold the picture up again. Dan Inouye's first wife was my first cousin Maggie Awamura. Maggie's mother was one of my father's older sisters. So Maggie's mother was Mitsu Sugiyama, another Sugiyama. Mitsu and my uncle Tokuyoshi had 6 daughters, and one of the daughters was Maggie Inoue, she became Maggie Inoue. Okay, and I have this, because I don't have my PowerPoint, this is a tiny little picture of my father with his sister Mitsu. Much later, of course. So, anyway, as a Sansei attorney, when I arrived in Danny Inoue's office, this was in 1979, January, I was put in charge of civil rights. So at that time, National JCL was already pushing for redress. They were already asking for money to compensate the internees. But Danny Inouye, as the senior senator from Hawaii, said no, he couldn't pass it. Because also at that time, there was a Republican senator, S.I. Hayakawa, which some of you have heard of. Hayakawa was saying that these camps were summer camps and that they weren't as bad as they were. And so Danny Inouye knew, and he told us that he couldn't pass it with S.I. Hayakawa out there saying that. And Sparky Matsunaga, the junior senator from Hawaii, agreed, and so did Congressman Norm Mineta and Bob Matsui, who were the only other Japanese Americans. So there were 5 Japanese Americans in Congress at the time. So instead, Danny Inouye, Senator Inouye said, we had to create a national commission. And the rest, and JACL agreed, everybody agreed, except of course Hayakawa. So then it fell on me to do it. So I came up with the name when I had to draft the legislation. I came up with the name National Commission on Wartime Relocation and Internment of Civilians. Because as an attorney, I knew instinctively that we had to make this neutral on its face. We had to wipe out wrong done against Japanese Americans, incarceration. You notice we don't mention any of that. We wanted it to be so bland that people might not notice what they were voting on. So they would just pass it. And it worked. Because you can see it's such a bland title. Okay, so anyway, then began the massive job of lobbying from the inside of the senator's office to pass this bill. JACL was out there lobbying from the outside. So what I did was I started thinking how to get this bill passed. So I started organizing civil rights groups, veterans groups, because they cared about what happened in the war. Asian American and Pacific Islander groups. They weren't that many, but they were rising at the time. So this whole massive movement started. We introduced the bill. It was S-1647. Introduced it over on the House side. It took a year and a half, but the momentum kept growing, and we were able to pass it. I have funny stories along the way of how we did it, but I don't know how much time on that. Anyway, so the bill was passed in 1980. Here is the picture of President Jimmy Carter signing the bill. This photo was sent to me by the senator, because I wasn't there at the time. He says, "For Carolyn Sugiyama, this was your day. With much affection and gratitude, aloha, Daniel K. Inouye." Because he knew how obsessed I was. I mean, I really was. I knew I would never leave DC until I got that bill passed. Because I felt on my back the 120,000 people, and some of whom had already died. And my regret is that we couldn't have done it any faster, because Issei were already dying, who had been in the camps. As most of you know, the 10 large relocation camps, there were some smaller FBI ones too. The 10 large camps were in desolate areas, 2 here in Arizona at Gila River, which the JACL of Arizona has a memorial cleanup. And I've been to that with Donna. It was very touching to go there because it's almost all descendants of people who were interned. And I knew 2 of them who were interned there at Gila River. So the other one was at Poston. And as you know, Of these people interned, 2/3 were US citizens and 1/4 were children. Okay, how I was able to push this bill through in the sense of explaining to the staff on the Senate side and the House side why we had to do this was I told them people were taken away as a civil rights violation, that there was no due process. There were no hearings, there were no charges. These were innocent people who were put away in the camps or had to flee like my father. And remember, Executive Order 9066 was only applied to the Japanese Americans, not to the German Americans, like my husband, or Italian Americans. Yeah, he wasn't born yet. Oh, incidentally, I forgot to say that Dan and Maggie were married in 1948 before I was even born. Because remember, my father being the youngest of the 8 children of that immigrant family, he was the little guy at the end, and all these other sisters and brothers who didn't go to college, they married young. Okay, anyway. So, the commission was created, thank God, and it went out and held hearings for 2 years across America, mostly in the states where the camps were held. Thousands of internees came forward and told the commission how horrible it was. The living conditions, the injustices, all the money that they lost. I mean, people lost lots of things because they had to leave like on a few days' notice or a week's notice, as most of you know. So here it is. The report was published in 1982, and the key passage is on page 18 of what they found. The promulgation of Executive Order 9066 was not justified by military necessity. The broad historical causes which shaped these decisions were race prejudice, war hysteria, and a failure of political leadership. A grave injustice was done to Japanese Americans and resident aliens of Japanese ancestry. And that's why it's called personal justice denied. The redress, JACL went on to fight for redress. Remember, they were already asking for it back then, in 1979 or before. Finally, in 1988, President Ronald Reagan signed what became the Civil Liberties Act of 1988. He apologized, and they gave $20,000 to each internee. But remember, this is 1988. Many more Nisei or Issei had already passed on. I'm moving on past redress because, I mean, that closed the chapter for JACL and many people. But of course, you know, life went on. In 2020, I fortunately won an outstanding haiku here at the Arizona Matsuri. It's in the program. They have it under my name, under my bio. I wrote here, just on the spur of the moment. Yeah, thank you. Strong Issei people jailed in camps in the desert, shikata ganai. And most of you know, shikata ganai means it cannot be helped. And that's what they said, Japanese Americans said when they came back from the camps. It could not be helped. A lot of us Sansei attorneys who were fighting for this, like John Tateishi, he has spoken to you folks before. I don't know if we really believe that, you know, we thought it could be helped. Okay, so why I'm talking to you tonight is that there's been a reconciliation of a wrong. Remember, I mentioned that my father had been expelled from USC. On April 1st of this year, USC, University of Southern California, apologized to the 120 Nisei students that they expelled, and they gave honorary degrees to 37 posthumously. They had given 11 before to people who are still alive in 2012. But people like my father passed away in 1996 at age 81. So of course, he wasn't there to get the degree. So here's the degree that they awarded my father. It's a bachelor's honorary degree. And we got a lot of publicity. I made the front page of the Daily Trojan, which is the USC newspaper. I mean, here I am accepting the degree from the president, Carol Fote. Made the LA Times. And of course, most of you know the Rafu Shimpo. So there was a lot of media coverage, which was wonderful because, these are Los Angeles people seeing that USC has made up for their wrong. They also created a beautiful tribute garden. It's a tribute rock garden right there next to their university club, which is a very solemn, wonderful, contemplative place. I don't have a photo, but you folks who have internet can Google it, Tribute Rock Garden USC. You'll see photos of it. It's quite moving. And I didn't think they would do that. I mean, they sent us by email a message that we were going to get the degree, but I didn't know about the tribute garden. So anyway, so that chapter is also closed. But for us, for me and my Sugiyama family, it's personal justice reconciled because now there's an honorary degree and an apology from USC. We didn't ask for it. I did nothing. My father didn't want me to pursue anything against USC. I asked him, because I was one of these advocate attorneys, Dad, can I do something to go after USC? And he said no. He wanted to just leave it behind and walk away. But here it is now. He has a degree. So anyway, lastly, I just want to say that thank you for inviting me to come here to tell my story. It's been 80 years since the executive order was signed in 1942. So here we are. I have given this talk, a similar talk to Day of Remembrance at the University of Arizona. So it's kind of nice to be here and to tell you folks what happened to our family and my role in all of this with Senator Inouye. And Senator Inouye passed away in 2012, December, and this program is from his memorial service. And as you folks know, he was probably the highest ranking Asian American politician. He ended up being president pro tempore of the United States Senate. So lastly, I just want to say that I'm the editor of the Southern Arizona Japanese Cultural Coalition website. So if you come down to Southern Arizona, Google our website because we promote all Japanese things down in the southern part of the state. And we have a beautiful Japanese garden, Yume Japanese garden. And I've been doing that for 9 years, so that's another obsession of mine. So I guess, I don't know if I have time for questions. Yeah, I have time for questions. So if anybody wants to ask anything, Bill said.
No, we do. We have time, yeah.
Okay.
We're on track.
Any questions? Yes.
Did the University of Maryland make your father start over?
No. He had attended 2 years University of Hawaii at Manoa. I don't think he told them. I found out just at this event that USC was blocking people from getting their transcripts. So I suspect my father didn't even tell them he was at USC. So it took him 2 years, and he got his dental degree, DDS. Yeah, and there was no racism against him in Baltimore. Good question, thank you. Anything else? No?
How about,
Oh, yeah, Jim.
Besides the internment camps that were here, how about the prison camp in Crystal City, Texas?
Oh, okay. Should I repeat it?
yeah, please do.
Should I repeat the first question?
No.
Oh, the first question was on the University of Maryland take longer or
No. Did they
Make him redo.
accept his previous work?
yes, except his previous studies, right? They had. The University of Maryland was terrific, and we had a lot of aloha for them. Not USC. Okay, so Jim's question is about the prison camp in Tucson, right?
Crystal City, Texas.
Crystal City, Texas. Jim, I don't know. Was that an FBI camp?
It was military camp.
Military camp.
Exchange.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. They were, remember, I was concentrating on the 10 big WRA ones, but I knew there were other FBI camps because one of my relatives, who was a Buddhist priest on the island of Kauai, he was taken to the Santa Fe, New Mexico camp. So I knew there were these other camps as well. And there was a small one in Honolulu, Honouliuli, but that was small compared to the massive ones up here in the U.S. mainland. I have to say that when I was fighting for this bill to pass, with talking to the people on the House side, they would come up to me and say, "Oh no, those are prisoners of war. Oh no, this didn't happen on U.S. soil." They thought these camps were in Japan. There was so much misinformation. So it was a lot of education and persuasion, and somebody over at the House, some congressman's chief of staff, called my chief, Danny Noy's chief of staff, to say, "Fire her." And so they called me in. Henry Juni called me in. He said, "You must be doing a good job if they're coming over here to tell me to fire you." He said, "Keep going." So I did. I have another funny story that I just remembered because my husband and I were visiting our granddaughter up in Seattle at UW. He gave a talk at UW. And we saw a bust of Senator Scoop Jackson there. It's just a head, like a statue. And I remembered, that Scoop Jackson was involved in all this because state of Washington was, one of those military exclusion zones. People were excluded from California, Oregon, Washington, and parts of Arizona, as most of you know. So one day when the Senate bill was stalling in the Senate because it passed the House first, and I'm really discouraged. So I'm walking in the corridor, the Russell Senate office building, and here comes my boss, Danny Noy. We're both alone. There's nobody in the corridor, which was really unusual. And he comes up to me and he says, "How's it going with S-1647? Because he just left it up to the staff to do it." So I said, "Senator, it's stalled in the Senate. I can't get a hearing." And he says, "Who's the chair of the committee that it's in?" I said, "Governmental Affairs, Senator Scoop Jackson from Washington." So Danny Noy stands there and he looks at me and he says, he was a man of few words. He says, "He owes me one." The next day, I get the call, and the hearing was set. And I went, all those months of me trying to get a hearing, I should have just gone to the senator and pushed for it. But it had to happen that way because at that point, a year later, we had a lot of mail. No internet those days, So we were getting just mail and phone calls and constituent visits. So Senator Noy was being inundated by all those groups that I was lobbying. So he knew this was important to a lot of people, that this probably should pass now. And it had taken a whole year. So I think the timing was actually quite accurate. But yeah, Scoop Jackson went ahead, held the hearing, the bill went to the floor. So anyway, anything else?
Maybe a reminder that we recorded your presentation.
Oh yeah, Bill, because I couldn't do my PowerPoint here with no screen, Bill and I had a Zoom meeting and he recorded most of what I've said on a 15-minute Zoom meeting. So it's going to be on the JACL.
Yeah. We'll post it right after this so
Yeah.
you can see the full PowerPoint presentation.
Right.
Yep.
So you can, for other people and
And your
posterity.
contact information is there. If
Right.
they have
That's right.
follow-up.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. Is that all of it? Yes. Oops.
That's what-
Good. Thank you.
So some of you may remember years ago, I was the speaker at a scholarship event. Bill Staples, the baseball historian, maybe you don't recognize me with the hair. I remember at the time, I'm also a youth coach. And I recall one of the key tips in working with athletes, young athletes, you have a minute for each year their age, for their attention span. So if you have a 10-year-old, you got a 10-minute drill, and you got to move on to the next thing. So I think we just lost the 18-year-olds, 16-year-olds somewhere towards the end. I'm kidding. All right. But we should move on to the the scholarship presentation. All right. So with that, I'm real excited to announce our first recipient. Is there anybody from the scholarship committee who's going to help? Or is there a photographer who's going to capture key life-changing moments here? There we are. All right. So with that, I will just begin reading the mystery bio of our first recipient, and the name will be revealed at the end. All right. So be prepared. This recipient is a member of her high school's track and field and cross-country teams as team captain. She is the current president of the Classical Musical Club and an accomplished pianist. She has volunteered at the Arizona Matsuri Festival and with engineering projects and community service. She is a member of the National Honor Society and Computer Science Honor Society at Xavier College Preparatory. The 2022 Sarah Hutchins Clardy Scholarship goes to Erica Germanario. You ever got it? All right.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm really honored to get this award. I'm planning to go to ASU Barrett Honors College and major in sustainability. So thank you.
Congratulations. All right. Our next scholarship winner earned a spot on the all-academic volleyball team for 2 years. She has served as a student ambassador helping other students and at schools. She has a passion for music and theater and earned 3 top awards in the Arizona District National Association of Teachers of Singing auditions. In 2019, she volunteered at an orphanage in Mexico and Feed My Starving Children. Congratulations to Jaden Nagai of Northwest Christian School.
Thank you so much. Next year I will be attending GCU and I will be majoring in biology with an emphasis in pre-med and also minoring in piano. Thank you.
All right, our next scholarship recipient has been, has been on her school's cross-country team for 5 years and a founding member of the K-pop club. She is a 4-year member of the National Chinese Honor Society, as well as the Anime Club. She has earned many academic awards, such as AP Scholar with Distinction, AP Calculus Student of the Year, and Studio Art Class Student of the Year. She is currently the co-president of the Arizona Buddhist Temple's Junior YBA, Young Buddhist Association. She is currently interning here at the Japanese Friendship Garden. Congratulations to Nanako Sugiyama of Basis Phoenix.
Hello, thank you so much to the JACL for this scholarship. I'm really excited that I was able to get this. Next year I'll be going to NAU's Honors College and I'll be majoring in nursing.
Congratulations.